Today I'm going to talk about taking 2 units and combining them into one to get that square footage that you've always dreamed of. But does it make sense? I'm going to get started right now. Hey everyone, my name is Jamey Prezzi. I'm a real estate agent in Miami and Miami Beach, and today I am going to answer a question that I get all the time from people because everyone wants more square footage, usually. But I'm getting this question a lot because people want to take units and combine them in their favorite building, but it does not always make sense. So I'm going to talk about some things you need to think through before you jump in and make this purchase. But first, before I get started, if this is your first time here, hit the subscribe button so you never miss another update. I do put out new videos every week. Also, use the link in my information box and download our free guide today. Okay, let's get started. So one of the first things that you have to think about when you are taking 2 units and combining them into one is, does it make sense, and will you get the floor plan that you actually desire? I see sometimes people do this and it does not make sense. The flow through is horrible. The design is just not there. I would highly recommend that you seek a professional's advice on this and hire an architect to help walk you through this process to make sure that it makes sense. I usually see this more successfully done in the higher end luxury properties around the city. And that's because, you know, a lot of those buildings have very unique properties inside of them already. It's very common for people to take 2 really super luxury units and combine them into one. It's more common in those higher end buildings. Where I don't see it very often done well is sort of in the mid-range price buildings. And the reason why, because those units were never designed with the future idea of potentially combining them. Whereas in some of the more super luxury buildings, the developers know that people have high budgets, and if they want to buy a whole floor, they can do it. So very often there is more thought put forth in designing those buildings where they know that people could actually take those units and combine them. So the first thing is, does the floor plan even work, and does it make sense? Over the years, I've seen it done very well, and I've seen it done very bad. And when it's done very bad, it can cost you a lot of money. And that's where you have to be very careful. Next, you have to ask the Condo Association if they even allow that. A lot of buildings don't allow you to purchase 2 units in that way and combine them. Maybe there's some kind of structural thing throughout the floor of those units. Maybe there's some electrical stuff or plumbing stuff, and they just don't want you breaking open the walls to combine 2 units. So definitely something to think about, and ask the Condo Association if they will even allow you to do that. When you do take 2 units and combine it into one, you're going to still have 2 folio numbers unless you combine those folio numbers. You need to speak to a real estate attorney about what that means. And also the question about homesteading the property, combining the 2 folio numbers, how does that work? Definitely something that we need to have a deeper discussion about. But one thing that sometimes people don't think about is the 2 association fees. And that's because usually most association fees are based on the square footage of the unit. So when you take 2, let's say 1,000 square foot units, and you combine them into one, now you're paying a monthly association fee every single month based on that fee that is involved every month with that 2,000 square feet. The reason why I think this is very important to think through is because people come to us at very different stages throughout their lives, and they always buy this property that they think is going to be their forever home, and they buy it with the intention of it being their forever home. But things come up in life, things change, jobs change, we have pandemics, stuff happens, you know? So in the future, what will happen if you need to sell this property? And that's where my real estate brain always turns on, because, you know, if you need to sell this property, do you have 2 folio numbers? Do you have 1 folio number? Was it done legally or not? Like, what is all of the details involved in actually selling that property and getting it on the market and getting it sold if you have taken 2 units and combined it into one? And like I said, I've seen this done very good, and I've seen it done very bad. One time I had this property that I had to sell. They kept two folio numbers and the floor plan just was very off. It just didn't make sense. It was a very hard property to sell. In fact, I never sold it because it was just really hard. It was hard to convince people to buy in that building at that price point because obviously, you know, they had to sell it for what they bought it for, but the price point was so high for that building, it didn't make sense. The price point was high, the taxes were really high because everything was like double, and also the monthly maintenance fees were high. So for that price point, a buyer could go into a more expensive building and buy a little bit higher end unit in a more expensive building because it just made sense. Versus I had one buyer recently who purchased a property in an Art Deco building and the units were combined and it was done with an architect and it's beautiful. It is still a very unique unit inside that building, higher in price point for sure, higher in maintenance and property taxes, but it's a beautiful unit. It fits very well for their family and the space is just incredible. And there's something to be said for that too. So if you have more questions about buying units that have larger square footages or taking two units and combining them into one, I'm always happy to have a discussion with you and walk you through some of the pros and cons. If you have more questions, we're always here to be a resource for you, and we will see you soon.